The modern right-wing movement is at a crossroads. Cultural conservatives basically checked out decades ago, and so they've left the libertarians in charge. This was a disaster. It turns out the live and let live, we just need lower taxes version of the right wing is basically useless. It doesn't have any cultural power. It doesn't have the ability to excite anyone. It doesn't have the ability to give the overall country meaning and purpose. It doesn't drive them forward. And this is a huge issue. The Republicans for so long, the conservatives for so long, have just been focused on this idea of liberty and rights and freedom and reducing the footprint of government. They've forgotten that we also need to talk about building families, building structures that allow people to get married and have children and succeed and have meaningful lives. And they've seen the culture crumble in front of them as a result. Conservatives, they should have realized that culture is a massive force. It's not something you can simply tuck your children away in a private school and avoid. It turns out that the things you learn, the things that you read, the things that you listen to, the things that you watch in movies, turn into the discussions you have with your friends, with your family. It turns out that those things end up shaping your behavior. That actually it's very important for the right to be involved in the cultural discussion. That's why we see this rising idea of the culture war, because the right wing is finally starting to realize that the left actually won this decades ago and have been dictating the values of their children, and they don't like it. This means that many right-wing voices are starting to return to this debate about culture, and one of the things they're noticing is social fabric. Ben Shapiro is probably one of the most noteworthy conservative commentators. Love him or hate him, he's probably the person that your liberal uncle thinks of as a Republican, a conservative. So he's one of these people who has jumped on board with this idea of the need to re-implement this social fabric. Social fabric is the idea that we have a shared set of institutions and values that people can trust, that communities get together and share, for instance, a religious background. They share a common language. They share a common culture that allows them to trust each other and bind together and have similar values. Shapiro has been saying now that we as a culture need to return to this idea of building social fabric. We need churches to get together and build support structures. We need families to get together and build support structures that allow young people to get married, that allow young people to afford houses and work jobs and still have children and build meaningful relationships and have meaning in their life. But at the same time, this idea of social fabric also butts up against what has become basically a sacred text for the right-wing movement, capitalism. Now, I want to say at the outset here, I am a capitalist. Capitalism right now seems to be the best economic organization for people. It seems to have the best results. It seems to bring the most prosperity. It seems to, at least at this point, provide the most benefit for humanity when it comes to constructing an economic system. However, capitalism is not a suicide pact. Capitalism isn't good because it's capitalism. Capitalism is good because of what it brings, the benefits it has for society, the benefits it has for families and individuals. In the areas in which capitalism does not yield those benefits, we should probably do something about that. We should probably see that as a weakness and a flaw and something that might need to be corrected. This doesn't mean that we're walking away from capitalism, but it does mean that we understand that it's not in and of itself a good. It's not in and of itself the thing we should be striving for. It only exists as a tool to help us make a better society, to become better people, to have better families, better communities. That's what matters. If capitalism does that, then we should embrace it. And where it doesn't, we should fix it, or we should find ways to supplement it, or we should find ways to correct it. But this idea that capitalism is a dogma that we must hold to, or otherwise we're violating principle, this is a silly thing for the right wing to believe in. But this is the crossroads we're at, the Shapiro paradox. Because Shapiro wrote an entire book, I read it, about the need for returning to social fabric. I think it's called The Right Side of History. He talks about the importance of returning to religion and why religion is so important for meaning and purpose, and it's the only way that morality really works, and it's the only thing that can really bind a community together. And I agree with all of that. But the thing about Shapiro is he'll say that out of one side of his mouth, but at the same time, he'll have an idea about economics that is entirely antagonistic to this principle, and he'll just state it as if there's no conflict and he doesn't see the issue. What I'm going to talk about here specifically is how his support for social fabric butts up against his idea that people should have to move in order to find new opportunities. This is an argument I've heard him make on his podcast many times. Shapiro will talk about lost jobs. He'll look at places in the middle of the country, and he'll look at people who are in industrial towns and that kind of thing, and he'll just say, look, you are not promised the life of your grandparents or your parents. You are not promised that you will be born and die in the same town. You have to go out and seek your fortune. That's what America is all about. Move out to where the jobs are, change your occupation, pick up your family and move to where you need to make money, make your fortune there. I get it, the entrepreneurial spirit, right? The pioneer spirit. That's what Shapiro's talking about. He doesn't realize how this contradicts his argument for social fabric. Social fabric means building communities. Social fabric means living where your family is. Because the beginning of social fabric is the family. The family is the bedrock. That's where you begin building social fabric. If you live next to your parents can help you take care of children you're raising. They can help you repair things with your house. You can rely on your brothers and your sisters to help you when you hit hard times. Individuals who can rely on their family can take more chances. They are more likely to be able to get a house. They're more likely to be able to have children. They're more likely to be able to have more children. They're more likely to be able to be successful in their career because they can rely on people around them. And then those people go out and they build social institutions around them. They build churches. They fill out dynamic church communities. They build civic organizations. They build clubs. They build bowling leagues. But they have to be in the same area. You have to have a presence. You have to have a reputation in order to build trust, in order to build social fabric. You have to have roots. You have to be in a community for multiple years, decades, generations. This is how you build social fabric. This is how you build trust, by having generations after generations of people who know each other, knew each other's parents, knew each other's grandparents. They all went to the same church. They all went to the same school. They all went to the same bowling club. They've all been doing this for many, many years. This is what builds tradition. This is what builds that social fabric that Shapiro is talking about. So when you say things like, if you're in a free market and your city falls apart because the main businesses there get shipped overseas, well, you should just move and go do the next thing. That's ridiculous. You can't say we should be relying on social fabric. We should be building communities. We should, as conservatives, support social fabric, and at the same time say, but yeah, just be a mercenary and get up and move to whatever area of the country, get whatever job you need, leave your family behind, leave your traditions behind, leave those bowling leagues, leave those churches, leave those community roots behind. Just go and just chase the money and forget all this stuff. That's how you tear social fabric apart. That's how you collapse a community. Obviously, you want a community to be stronger than one individual person, but if the general ethos of your society is just pick up and go wherever the work is and forget your roots, forget your family, forget your generations, forget your church, forget your organization you've been part of for 25 years that your dad was a part of, that your grandpa was a part of, forget all of that stuff, go where the work is. And this is what you expect people to do constantly because capitalism is ripping up their job and sending it somewhere else. This is ridiculous. You can't have both at the same time. We have to figure out a way, if we want people to actually build social fabric, to allow them to stay in communities. We have to figure out a system that still gives us many of the benefits of capitalism, but also allows us to keep our roots, keep our traditions, stay in the place where our family was from if we wish. We shouldn't have to uproot ourselves every 5 to 10 years to find a new job and then expect people to actually build meaningful societal bonds. This is silly, but this is exactly what Shapiro and many of his ilk argue. And this Shapiro paradox is a bane to conservatism, because if everyone is just some kind of rootless economic unit out there trying to figure out how to make a living, never building wealth, never building stability, never building a family, never building roots, never building a culture, then we will of course see things fall apart, which is exactly what we are seeing. Shapiro also backs things like large-scale immigration due to his basic libertarian doctrine that every person should be able to go and move and work wherever they want. Government shouldn't have the ability to restrict the movement of workers. And yeah, except, what if that means that none of the people in a community can ever make a decent living? What if that means that corporations in the area, businesses in the area are continually shipping in lower cost labor from outside of the culture? What does that mean? Well, you should just pick up and go where the new jobs are. Okay, but what do I do with this social fabric? What do I do with that community you told me to build? What do I do with these roots you had me set down? How am I supposed to raise a child when I move away from my parents? When we don't have the time, we need the help. Well, you just figure it out. This is one of the main paradoxes that conservatism faces right now. It's recognized the need for the social fabric. It's recognized the need for communities, but it's still wedded to this idea of unbridled capitalism, to this unfettered markets idea. And again, it doesn't mean we need to become socialists. It doesn't mean we need to become communists. It doesn't mean that we need to start singing the Russian national anthem anytime soon. But conservatives need to square the circle, and we need to square it fast, because people are going to start noticing this. This is the reason that you're seeing a pushback against guys like Ben and more of the remaining neocon libertarian versions of conservatism, because people are starting to recognize that the systems that we have embraced are the ones that are feeding our destruction. Of course, social fabric is first and foremost a cultural issue. We have to return to a religious faith. We have to return to building families. We have to return to a commitment to community. But if everything about making a living is fighting that, if there are structural problems to getting married and having children and staying married and building a family and building an intergenerational legacy, if there are fundamental economic issues blocking the formation of families, blocking the formation of communities, and destroying long-standing social roots, we need to address them. We need to stop treating free market capitalism as if it is a god. It is not. It has great benefits. We should embrace them and use them whenever possible. But we need to understand that at times it works to the detriment of the things we are trying to achieve. And we need to put building families, building communities first. We as conservatives have to get our priorities right. Because if we don't, if we continue down this road of just hoping that there'll be a cultural change, but not being willing to recognize and fundamentally address the issues around that problem, we will only be doubling down on the absolute failure that has been the right-wing movement during my lifetime. I hope you guys enjoyed the Magic Arena. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thanks so much.